This is Nick Redding, and you're listening to PreserveCast, a podcast with a worldwide listenership that explores the broad world of preservation from every angle, from drones to mudlarking and everything in between. Now, let's get preserving. When a building's fate is settled, what can be done to save its memories? How can a community be engaged and given an opportunity to tell their story about that place? For Cumberland, Maryland-based photographer Michael Hunter Thompson, the answer is through detailed photography. On this week's PreserveCast, we're talking about how this photography project engaged thousands and underscored the power of place that preservationists around the nation should think about as they work to rally communities of their own. This is Nick Redding, and you're listening to PreserveCast. Today, we're excited to be joined by photographer Michael Hunter Thompson, and we're going to be talking about a unique project that he's been working on to document a site and kind of go in depth on the history of a site. And we're going to go into all of that and how photography can be used in a compelling way to do that. But before we get there, we love to get to know folks. So, Michael, where'd you grow up? What led to this passion in photography? What's your career? Let us know a little bit about you.
Okay. Yeah. I grew up here in Cumberland, Maryland, in Western Maryland in Allegheny County. And I really got into photography. I've always been into art, and there's a local gallery here, Allegheny Arts Council, that does photography competitions, all kinds of gallery shows. And back in 2011, they did, I entered one of my first photography competition exhibitions and was pleasantly surprised that I was accepted. So it kind of got the bug into me to photography. And it kind of has grown organically and rapidly from there. And it's just one of those things that I have a huge passion for.
So it's a passion. I was going to say it's a passion, but what do you do professionally?
Professionally, I'm a sales rep. So that's my day job. And this has turned into basically, especially this particular project, has turned into a full-time job for the last couple of years.
And you've grown up in Cumberland and have lived there your entire life. For people who are listening, we have a listenership all across the globe. So tell people about where Cumberland is and kind of maybe paint a picture of what Cumberland is as far as a town and the history of the place before we jump into the specific project. But I think kind of painting a picture of where you live would be important because I think for a lot of people, they don't know what that means.
Sure. Cumberland is in Western Maryland, Allegheny County, far Western Maryland, more Western than Hagerstown. We're out here on the Panhandle section of the state. And it's just a quaint, very historical small town that used to be not very small, but industry has led to a lot of industry has gone out. It used to be called what's still called the Queen City because it used to be the second most populated city in Maryland behind Baltimore. And so it has a lot of history. George Washington was here for the French and Indian War and the Whiskey Rebellion. And so there's a lot of cool architectural stuff here, and it's really steeped in tradition and history that possibly not too many people know about out here. And I think that if people came here, it's the mountains, it's Appalachia. You got a lot of traditions and history out here in Western Maryland.
So let's take a step back. For people who aren't familiar with Allegheny High and the Fade to Blue project, which is what we're going to be talking about. So we talked a little bit about Cumberland and placed it in that. And we're going to talk about this Allegheny High and the Fade to Blue project. But where is it? What's your connection to Allegheny High and what's sort of Allegheny High's story? And then we'll talk about Fade to Blue.
Okay, first off, I'm a 1999 graduate of Allegheny High School. It's here in Cumberland. There's two major public high schools here in Cumberland that are both very historic. Allegheny High School being the first. It opened up in 1887 as the first public secondary school in Allegheny County. It's been in many locations. It's currently in its sixth location, but the project is about its fifth location on Sedgwick Street here in Cumberland. My connection, it goes a little bit deeper because my mom was actually the art teacher at Allegheny on Sedgwick Street for about 17, 18 years. After I graduated, she went there and taught art for about 17, 18 years. So, plus it's a small town. You know all the people that go there. There's Fort Hill, and then there's Allegheny and high schools and here in Cumberland that are public schools. And you're either Fort Hill or Allegheny. It's like one side of the town or the other side of the town. So you know everybody that went to Allegheny. And it's just a small town feel of it.
And so what prompted this? We're going to talk about the project, but what prompted all of this and what happened with Allegheny High?
So Allegheny High, the building on Sedgwick Street that this project is about is set to be razed actually starting next week. I believe it was the longest running, continuously running high school in the state up until its closing in 2018. They built a new facility just because the old building was starting to be a little run down, and it was just old and a lot of asbestos, all that kind of thing. So what prompted this was I found out that the building was ultimately going to be razed. There was a lot of back and forth with the city and the county. What was going to happen to the building? Was it going to be repurposed? There was a lot of back and forth for a while. It sat there basically abandoned when the new facility was built about a mile away. And it began to be vandalized, and the Board of Education and the county took everything out of it. And when I found out that it was going to ultimately be razed, I thought that it needed to be documented in some way, and that's kind of where I came in.
So let's talk about the exhibit. If these halls could talk, a tribute to Allegheny's Campobello. What was the emphasis for the exhibit? How'd you pull it all together? Tell us about it.
So I was up at the old school, at the old building, and I had heard that it was going, it had been vandalized. So I was very curious as to what it looked like inside. And I was up there with my daughters and my dog, just kind of walking around, showing them where I went to high school. And I looked into a window, and it looked so cinematic, but bizarre at the same time, which really kind of fed into my photography brain. And I just thought to myself, I could stage a photo inside that gymnasium. That's where I looked into the window. There was all this dust all over the floor, and you could see all these footsteps on the basketball court. And I just thought to myself, I could stage a photo in there. And what if I could get alumni and former staff to come in and be the figures in the photograph? From there, I put it out on Facebook to see if anybody would be interested in participating, and I got permission from the county to get inside the school. And it basically just exploded on Facebook, where I ended up doing a 10-day session photo shoot with about 500 participants, all former staff and alumni, dating back. The earliest one was the class of 1942 all the way up to the class of 2021. And I ended up doing about 30 different locations inside and outside of the school, basically trying to capture a coming of age, really, every cross-section of high school life I could think of. And I tell you, it began as a photography project, then it turned into a community project, and then it kind of organically has turned into this unique preservation effort all at the same time. So it's really kind of evolved from the initial idea, the inception of it, and the driving force was just to capture and document the tradition and pride of a city that has embraced Allegheny High School for over a century. Did it start a conversation around, should we have saved this place? Were people sort of upset with the demolition? Absolutely, yeah. But that conversation had ended. That's what prompted the whole thing. It ultimately came to my knowledge that it was going to ultimately be razed. And that's when I thought to myself, well, when I looked into that basketball court and saw that cinematic image in my mind, I thought to myself, well, this is the last chance. If anybody's going to do something in there like this, it's going to be me. And I just thought that I had like a vision that was a little bit unique, because I don't have a history preservation background. So I didn't look at it from that angle. And I think it was just one of those things that kind of evolved because it was such a dark time. We had COVID. We had, it was just, a lot of negativity towards the building because people hold their high school dear because they grow up in high school. So this became a very positive thing in kind of a dark time, and people just embraced it almost immediately.
Do you think if this kind of project had happened earlier, the building might have been saved?
That's a good question. That is a good question. To tell you the truth, 90% of my thought is no, just because it had really gone downhill structurally.
Right.
And it was built in 1925 through 1926, and then there was a lot of additions put on throughout the years. So it almost turned in to a Frankenstein building. Like if you were inside the building, there was always you're an incoming freshman, you're immediately that you're going to get lost in this building because it was not easy to navigate the hallways to your classes and stuff because it was put together throughout the century, different parts of the building. So, but it was just kind of derelict inside over the years. But if you were in there at the time as a student, you wouldn't notice. You didn't know any better. It was your high school, and you didn't really notice that it had kind of started to, not fall apart, but it was just old, and there was a lot of issues. It was still using coal boilers, stuff like that. So it was just could have been saved not as a high school and possibly repurposed as something else. It would have taken a lot of money to do something like that, and that could have been a possibility. But as far as a facility for a high school, I believe that one was probably needed.
Interesting. So why don't we take a break here, come back, and then let's talk about the historic research methods class and all that kind of stuff, and then what's coming up next for you. And we'll do that right here in PreserveCast. Historic preservation can't happen without skilled tradespeople to perform the work, and there's a critical need right now for those tradespeople. The Campaign for Historic Trades, powered by Preservation Maryland, is working to meet that need by strengthening apprenticeship opportunities within historic trades. In partnership with the National Park Service's Historic Preservation Training Center and Conservation Legacy, the campaign is currently recruiting for NPS Traditional Trades Apprenticeship Program, or TTAP. TTAP's an intensive 20-week apprenticeship that provides young adults the chance to learn historic trade skills while working on America's most iconic historic sites. Multiple positions are open for the 2022 season at national parks across the country. Visit historictrades.org for more information on TTAP and how to apply today. This is Nick Redding. You're listening to PreserveCast. Today we're joined by Michael Hunter Thompson. We've been talking about his effort to document a historic school in Cumberland, Maryland, and be able to kind of put together this exhibit. And we didn't mention before, where is the exhibit actually being displayed? And can people, if people are listening and aren't in Cumberland, is there a way that they can see it?
Absolutely. It's my portion of the exhibition is going to be at the Allegheny Arts Council downtown on North Center Street. And it's basically going to be the photos that I took. I'm going to print them up, large format. And every photo is a different kind of cross-section of high school life, everything from, football players to, shop class, chemistry lab, the basketball court, even girls smoking in the bathroom. I mean, I got everything you could imagine. And every photo, there's like intermingled generations of people. So alumni from 1955 are in the same image as like an alumni from 2001, and so on and so forth. So I also got permission to go into the building and kind of remove anything that I felt that was significant and shouldn't go down with the ship. So those items will also be installed into the gallery along with my photos and other like little historical mementos and special items that came from the project. So that'll be at the Allegheny Arts Council in July.
And if people are listening but want to see it, is there a way that there's going to be able to see it online?
I believe they will have an online gallery, which the Allegheny Arts Council has been doing for their, last year or so with their exhibition. So that shouldn't be difficult to do.
Fantastic. And we'll put a link to there in the show notes. So tell us about the historic research methods class. I think people listening And I want to have a conversation before we go too about, sort of lessons learned and people listening around the country. It's fascinating what you did in Cumberland, but how people could kind of pick up and use what you did to look at other sites that they might be thinking about. But tell us about this class in 1999 and how the program worked with you to kind of preserve this legacy.
I tell you, it's a very unique and wonderful class that's taught up at Allegheny High School. I believe it may be the only of its kind in the nation at a public high school. What they do is the class is started in 1999, and what they do is they pick a subject that's like an Allegheny County historical community subject, and they've done what they do is they try to research a historical event or a subject that has to do with the area, and they do that the entire year. And at the end of the year, they usually publish a book, an oral history book. They go and then they interview people. They've done it on World War II veterans. They've done it on the Depression, theaters throughout the state. Let's see here. Oh, they've done one on African American history in Allegheny County. And they've done 15 books in total. And this year, they didn't do a book. They've kind of seen how this project has come together. And I started receiving a lot of historical artifacts, just people starting to give me items. And it just became a little bit too overwhelming and too many items to fit into the gallery. So what they're doing this year is the students are curating and they're getting together another exhibition, which will also be in downtown Cumberland at the Allegheny Museum. And it'll just be historically based information and artifacts about Allegheny High School from its beginning in 1887 all the way up to the present. And they'll have many artifacts. Actually, one of the really cool things that they're doing is they went into Minecraft, the video game Minecraft, and they used drone footage to do like a scaled down model of the Sedgwick Street building, the one that's being razed. And what they're doing is they're doing a 7-foot scaled down model in Legos of the school, which is, I've seen this thing. It is unbelievable that these kids are doing this. But that's just one portion of the exhibition that they're doing. It's
fascinating. And you said you graduated. Did you take the class when it was happening?
No, I really wish I had, though. It wasn't really called the Historical Research Methods class in 1999 when I graduated. That was the first year that they did it. It was almost like a special project that they worked on. It was about a silk mill here in Allegheny County, about the history of it. And it kind of just grew and grew. And Brian White, who's the teacher now, has really kind of evolved it into this new, not new now, but it's become like a pretty major course here in Allegheny County that I think should definitely get some attention. It's very fascinating.
Yeah, well, maybe listeners can stay tuned. It sounds like a great PreserveCast for us to jump in.
I think so.
Yeah, and talk to them. So, so we know where it's being exhibited. We know what you've done to do this, and sort of the impetus for it, and the loss of the building. If people around the country are listening, they're like, "Well, that's cool, but I don't live in Cumberland, or I don't really know about Allegheny High." Were there any lessons learned that you would share with people? Say like, "Well, do this," or get involved earlier," or are there things that you learned along the way that you wish others would know if they were trying to do something like this?
What I've learned is communities embrace the buildings that kind of make up their landscape. And when a building isn't just about a building is about the community that interact with the structure. That is what I've learned is the people make up the building and what it means to the community. And when something important to the community, a structure like that, is in jeopardy of being lost, they will come together and embrace a project that could potentially save it, or could potentially come together in a project that documents it and preserves it in memory. And really, what I've learned is with this specific thing is, and I'm sure it's like this across the nation, is when a building is in jeopardy, it's a lot of negative for years about, is it going to be gone? Why is it going to be gone? Why is it going to be torn down? What could be done? And it's just a lot of just friction and things like that. And a project like this at the very end of a building's lifespan, whether or not it's going to be repurposed or razed, it's like one big positive jolt of energy into the community right before the building's going to be changed or just completely gone. And I believe that other communities could take this project, what I've done here, and kind of spin it the way that they think it would be best for their community, put their own flavor on it. And it's basically like I'm doing a book on this. It became clear that people wanted a book done on this. So, and when these people have an opportunity to see this book and have this book, it is a keepsake. It's the building. It's the feelings that they had whenever they were participating in the project, whether or not they participated or not. They probably know somebody that did, because it's such a small community and everybody knows everybody. And it's just, I tell you, it's been fascinating to just learn how much a building means to a community. I guess if you boil it down to that.
I think it's interesting that you said early on, you sort of an all shucks, and you were like, well, I'm not really a preservationist, and I'm not sure I've heard a better case for preservation than what you just made. So I think you whether or not you like it, you're a preservationist now, Michael.
I appreciate that. People tell me I'm like an accidental historian.
I like it. The accidental preservationist. So what's next? I mean, are you giving up sales and just going into preservation photography? What's the plan?
Well, the sales has been like the backbone of my financial stability. Photography is not an easy thing to make money. It's hard, but it's my path. It's like a creative itch I have to scratch. If it's not there, there's something wrong. I have to do it. It's really become something that I love to do, and the kind of photography that I do is I have to have people involved. So you get to know a lot of people doing it, and I set up these photos a certain way, and people come together and are part of these pictures that I do, and they just love. At first they're like, I don't know if I want to do that, and then I kind of talk them into it, and they come and do it, and they just love it, and they have that story to tell, and of course we have that relationship moving forward. Hey, we came together and did this thing, and we'll always have that, and we have those memories surrounding that, and it's always just a fun thing to do. And trust me, I'd love to do more projects like this, because it's really opened my eyes what you can do with photography and preservation. Like I said, I didn't come at this from a preservation angle, so people keep telling me that I don't think inside the box, the preservation historical box. I was kind of thinking outside, not on purpose. It's just the way the vision that I had, because I didn't know any better, really.
So if people were, and this is just so for people kind of listening who are interested in maybe coming, they've heard about Cumberland and now they want to go visit. You got any favorite things that you would recommend people come and take a look at if they're in your community?
I tell you, this has become a big cycling hub, because we have the C&O Canal, the towpath, the bike trail, right, which starts here in Cumberland, and it goes down to like the DC area. But it also is where the towpath bike trail connects with the Gap bike trail, which starts in Cumberland and goes to like Pittsburgh. So people come from all over the place because it's very scenic, and it's a big deal. We also have the scenic railroad, where a steam engine takes you from Cumberland up to Frostburg, which is about 7-8 miles up the road. and you get to experience that. We have like the Polar Express kind of thing at the Christmas time. This is where the National Road started also. I mean, it's a very historical spot, and it's very scenic too. It's where, you know, some Marylanders, like in the central part of the state, or even in the the eastern part of the state, they don't realize that all the way out here in Western Maryland, we have these very scenic mountains and little historical towns that they're just quaint and very artistic, and we have like an influx and concentration of artists around here, which always makes things more interesting, in my opinion. So, I mean, Cumberland has a lot to offer. It really does. And I think we should put a little magnifying glass on it and try to expose some of the great things that are out here.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think Cumberland is a gem, and it's I like to think that it could be like Maryland's Asheville if it played its cards
we
right.
have said stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's the truth. It really could be that way. I always tell my wife, I'm like, in our lifespan, in our lifetime, we're going to see Cumberland have this renaissance. And I think it's happening. It's going to happen. I'm very confident in it. It's right here. It's 2 hours from Pittsburgh. It's 2 hours from Baltimore. It's 2 hours from Washington, D.C. And what's come out of this pandemic is you don't have to live in a city to do the work that you need to do. You can live in a place like Cumberland and be virtual and have much, much lower mortgage payment and have the ability to do whatever you want to do and live in a nice little quaint town and get to wherever you need in a small amount of time.
Well, this has been wasn't meant to be, but it's been a great ad for Cumberland. So hopefully people listening who are cyclists get out there and visit it. It is a beautiful place, a great place to visit during summer, anytime, but summer is beautiful. And
the fall,
there's just huge amount of public land to get out and see. So before we go, we ask this of everyone beyond Allegheny High. What's your favorite historic place or site?
In Cumberland or just in general?
Anywhere.
Oh, man. You know, as a kid, I used to love going with my family to Ocean City on the boardwalk. I've always been drawn to the ocean and that life, just being next to such the enormity of an ocean, the Atlantic Ocean, and having that right there and being able to walk it up and down as a kid, and now taking my kids there and seeing them. You get your saltwater taffy, you get your salt and vinegar fries and all that stuff, and you get to go on the rides, and you get to see the social aspect of interacting with people, walking by you the entire time. And you know, I always have loved that. I know that's a historic place, but and maybe not the answer
No, it's perfect. It's, you know, it's places that speak to us, and I think be hard pressed to find a Marylander who hasn't been there and doesn't have a fondness for it. So it's a perfect capstone, and you couldn't go any further from Cumberland in Maryland.
I know.
So I mean, you fall off the edge otherwise. So
that's true.
Yeah. Well, this has been so much fun to talk with you. We'll have to have you back maybe when the book is out, and people can we'll put links to that in the show notes and to your website. And it's been a pleasure talking with you. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Nicholas. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to PreserveCast. To dig deeper into this episode's story, head over to preservecast.org for show notes and our collection of previous episodes. Don't forget to engage with this podcast by subscribing, commenting, and leaving a review. Follow along on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at PreserveCast for even more. PreserveCast is currently recorded in Walkersville, Maryland, and sponsored by the 1772 Foundation, and powered by Preservation Maryland. Thanks for listening, and keep on preserving.